Jerusalem, at least in this portion, is referred to as almost like an oppressed people, right?
Yeah.
And so again, we're going back to this is who God is the God of. He's God of the oppressed, and he's going to go after anybody who's oppressing. That's the whole point.
Yeah. Right now, he's the God of the Ukrainians.
Totally. Exactly. It's a beautiful point. Yeah. And in that, what does that then play into for me? Well, don't be oppressive, Luke. Like, don't be the oppressor. And here's what oppression really looks like, right? It's someone who has power, who uses it for their own advantage at the expense of someone else, right? So I don't want to oppress. I don't want to be Egypt. I don't want to be Babylon. I don't want to be Assyria. I want to be Jerusalem. I want to be the one, and that's where it gets into this, right? So verse 10, he says, I'm going to pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of what? Of grace and supplication. So they're going to come to me. I'm going to be really kind to them. I'm going to wash over them, and they're going to get this kind of like, they're going to come to me very humbly. They're going to come to me wanting to serve. Supplication. Because they're going to look on me, the one they've pierced, and they're going to mourn him as one mourns for an only child and grieve bitterly for him as one grieves for a firstborn son. On that day, the weeping in Jerusalem will be as great as the weeping of Hadad Rimmon. On that day, a fountain will be opened to the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem to cleanse them from sin and impurity. Gosh, when you realize what's happened, it's going to be sad. It's going to be an incredibly, when you realize that you've done something wrong, you usually have a feeling of regret, right? But in this passage, it's referring to the realization of Israel that they've just killed the Messiah, right? And I think for context, we have to understand that, again, people have been waiting for 70 years to come back from exile. They're wanting to see the kingdom of Israel rebuilt. They're wanting to see the Messiah. They know that in order for the kingdom of Israel to be rebuilt to its former glory, they need the descendant of David. They need the guy, the Messiah. And oh my gosh, you're going to wake up one day, Israel, and you're going to realize you killed that guy. That sucks. That's going to be a hard moment, right? I think about Peter, who the sun rises and the cock crows and he goes, oh my gosh, what did I just do? I think about Judas, which is there's a reference in here at the end of Zechariah about 30 shekels of silver, right?
Oh yeah.
And I think about Judas, who's hanging himself on a tree, weeping, right? Like there's so much regret. And I think the big one here is you go to Pentecost and you have Peter, who gives this brilliant, the only way that he can give this kind of a sermon so well, so articulately. I was just teaching because we just had Pentecost Sunday.
Yeah.
And so I was teaching on this passage on Pentecost, and I was just studying it. I'm blown away by how well Peter articulated the vision of the crucified, resurrected Jesus to a group of people in so few words. I'm like, you couldn't have, every word is so well placed, right? And Peter does all of this, and he says, Jesus is the one, and you crucified him. You're the ones that did it. And then it says at the end of his speech, it says that the people were cut to the heart, right?
They were mourning the one they pierced.
Yeah, and Zechariah, is trying to point out it's a lot of people, and it's not just one group of people; it's all kinds of different people. Peter gets up and he says this. Oh my gosh, you're the one that killed him. Who's hearing it? Well, it's not just the clan of David. It's not just the clan of Nathan. It's all of them.
Yeah,
that are hearing this, and you know what the response is? It says they were cut to the heart. What must we do? Right?
And then suddenly a fountain comes forward, and they're cleansed from sin and impurity.
God pours out what does he give them? He gives them a spirit of grace and supplication. And so the people go, we're the ones that did this. We realize that. And what do we have to do? Right? That's supplication. And then, yeah, like you're saying, then this river, this fountain, water, which represents in scripture over and over, represents purification, washing, new life. Anytime you see running water in scripture, it should be a light bulb clicking on to say, oh, we're talking about new life. That all happens, and the people give their lives. And then so that's, to me, going back to what we talked about last time, what we're seeing in this theme at the end of Zechariah, the day of the Lord. So we have a day of the Lord in Pentecost where there's judgment brought, right? I mean, that's what Peter says is very judgmental. You killed him. That's a judgment. And what that judgment leads to is it's justice that rends the heart, that turns people back to God. And these people who oppressed Jesus are then turned back to him. And then that leads me all the way back to me. What's my day of the Lord? So where is it in my life that I have been the oppressor, that I have oppressed Jesus? And the sheep, think sheep and the goats.
Yeah, when you did not do it to the least of these.
I didn't realize who I was hurting. And oh my gosh, I just did it. I just hurt that person.
The crucifixion is still pretty fresh on his mind. It's only been a month or two since he was following at a distance, repenting for being one of the people that deserted Jesus, watching him get crucified, and talk about a traumatic life event. And now here he is, empowered by the Spirit. And I wonder if there was some motion behind him. You guys killed him. If he's just like, look what you did.
Totally. Sorry, I'm getting excited.
There,
do you think that he was standing at that crowd, and do you think he's seeing faces that were in the crowd saying, "Give us Barabbas"?